What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's a massive culture war battle currently raging across various platforms. And it's becoming clear as day that the consumers that actually keep the game industry afloat are fighting back. And the people who want to ruin our favorite hobby are not pleased at all, and they're demanding that these individuals be silenced. There's quite a bit to go over, so let's get to it. This all started because a user on Steam decided to release a curator, which if you don't know what those are, they're essentially filter tools that you can use to find things more effectively on Steam. Like you could have a curator that automatically combs through Steam's thousands of games and looks for Souls-likes or JRPGs, you get the idea. It's a handy tool, and it makes life for many much easier. It can also be used to compile lists of games that have other things in common besides genre. And this curator tool in question compiles all the games that Sweet Baby Inc. has worked on into one handy, comprehensive list. This has, of course, pissed off a few people who work at Sweet Baby, but let's dial back a second here. Since not everyone knows who or what Sweet Baby even is, to quickly give you the lore surrounding them, Sweet Baby is a consulting firm that works primarily on video games, and their sole mission is to bring inclusivity and diversity into the games that they work on, by handling things from character interactions, dialogue, how concepts are presented, and so on. Basically, when a company doesn't know how to properly convey a culture or the small things included with a character so they don't end up making something racist by accident, they call these consulting firms to ensure they don't do things in a tone-deaf way. Obviously, from hearing that, you might well think that doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, that's of course the opposite of what's happening here. Seeing as how pretty much every game that Sweet Baby has touched has been to varying degrees made worse with their involvement. The latest case would of course be Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which if you compare that game to the previous ones it's attached to, that being of course the Batman Arkham games, the tonal differences, not to mention how characters are treated, couldn't be any more different. And whenever Sweet Baby gets involved, it becomes evidently clear that these products suddenly, without question, give favorable care to any character that isn't a straight white male. Batman in Arkham compared to Squad is of course one really good example. However, the other one that disappointed me greatly was how Peter Parker was treated from Spider-Man 2018 compared to the most recent game. In the 2018 game, which had no Sweet Baby involvement to my knowledge anyway, Peter Parker was an extremely capable, heroic young man. And I would argue that version of Peter and Spider-Man to be an incredible depiction of what a modern-day Spider-Man should be. So much so that I honestly wish the MCU Spider-Man was more like that Spidey in the 2018 Insomniac game. Then, when you play Spider-Man 2, suddenly Peter seems weaker and not as capable as a hero, seemingly out of nowhere. And Miles Morales, who is clearly a person of color, starts to quickly overshadow Peter. And by the end of Spider-Man 2, Miles is confirmed by Insomniac to be the main Spider-Man going forward. Which, if you've played the Insomniac games, Miles being the main character doesn't make really any sense at all. Especially considering that the main villains of the next inevitable Spider-Man game will obviously be Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. And fans who've played these games would know that Miles has no personal connection to either of these villains, yet of course Peter obviously does. But that doesn't matter, because Peter Parker represents everything Sweet Baby and their consultants actively work to undermine or ruin in their entirety. So this company has essentially made video games across the board more inclusive, but retroactively has also made every single title they've touched worse because of their involvement. And this Steam Curator tool compiles a list of every game that has had Sweet Baby involved. Here, I'll show you some of the games. As you can see, they've worked on quite a few AAA titles already, including the Sony Spider-Man games Ratchet & Clank, which of course introduced Rivet, who outshines Ratchet quite often in that game, because she's a girl, so that's a part of their objective too. And interestingly enough, you'll also notice quite a few games that have either not resonated with fans, such as Starfield, or games that have outright bombed in closed studios, like Forspoken and Saints Row. Even other DC games that got terrible receptions, like Gotham Knights, have also been worked on by Sweet Baby as well, which is a game that felt like a pale imitation of the Batman Arkham series, and went out of its way to make sure that you knew that Nightwing and Robin are not straight because ESG reasons. As you can see, this tool is also gaining a lot of steam, no pun intended, in terms of followers. Last night, it was around 9,000 follows. Now, as of the making of this video, it's around 24,000. And as you can see in real time here as I refresh the page over and over again, the number of follows is steadily increasing at a healthy rate, so this curator tool is becoming quickly popular and it's clear fans are happy that it exists. Of course, the people at Sweet Baby think its existence is harmful, and actively want it removed and are resorting to trying to strong-arm Steam into banning the user in question. And if that were to happen, not only would this user lose their curator tool, but access to their entire library of games on Steam as well. So what are these Sweet Baby boys and girls saying exactly? Well, before I do that, just a reminder, don't harass these people. Let's just analyze and look over what they're doing. And to be frank with you guys, these Sweet Baby employees are doing more damage themselves by bringing attention to this to begin with. But anyway, one of these consultants is someone named Chris Kindred, who here, as you can see, tells their thousands of followers to report this tool. And they also made it apparent here that they're hoping it works so that this user loses their game library access. Kindred is basically jangling keys in front of their followers to mass harass and report someone that they don't agree with, which is technically against the terms of service on Twitter. And that's why I tell you to not harass these people, because we cannot stoop to their level. There's also another sweet Bing Bong baby here whose username is Lego Butts. That name might not be familiar to many of you, but let me catch you up on some lore, shall I? So thanks to Grums over on Twitter. He's the guy who led the original team that made World of Warcraft, produced Diablo 2 and StarCraft and more. Well, he's on our side, fellas. He thinks Sweet Baby is a cancer as well, so he's been calling out all of these people, who have all to varying degrees locked their replies or accounts entirely. But don't worry, I got all the receipts already, fellas, so we're good over here. Anyway, back to Lego Butts. They work for Sweet Baby as well, and they're of course echoing what that Kindred person said and wants the curator tool gone and the user banned on Steam, for simply making a curator tool that does what it's said to do. However, it turns out Lego Butts is a veteran of the Gamergate era, as thanks to Grums. So, back in February 2014, people like Lego Butts, who's in bed with people like Zoe Quinn, who, if you know anything about Gamergate, Zoe Quinn is an infamous figure during this time. She's a raging feminist who actually, through accusations that weren't true, ended up getting a game developer to, how do I say this on YouTube? Well, they unalive themselves because of her. And she has been known to use her influence to get positive reviews on stuff she's worked on too. So, back in 2014, Zoe Quinn, along with this Lego Butts user, launched a DDoS attack against a site they didn't agree with called the Find Young Capitalists, which was a targeted attack that brought the site down to its knees because people like Quinn and Lego didn't agree with them. And Zoe Quinn was even quoted saying when this happened at Lego Butts, "Oops, we DDoS something on accident." Then Quinn said, "I like how a conversation between me and Lego Butts resulted in accidentally killing an exploitative startup's website." So who are these young capitalists exactly? Apparently, they were a charity that was working to get women to work in video games. And through sponsors and charity, they would create games with the goal of promoting women. For whatever reason, Zoe Quinn and Lego Butts didn't want this to go through. And though those tweets are still available on Twitter as of the making of this video anyway, they decided to dox the charity, which resulted in that charity losing $10,000 in sponsors due to those companies pulling out due to the dox. And Lego Butts went out of their way to dox people who worked with this charity because they wanted to. I'll link a Reddit thread in the description if you want to go over it yourself, since it's a lot, and obviously since I don't want this video to be like an hour long, I won't delve too deep into it. But the point here is that people like Lego Butts are intrinsically tied to the Gamergate era, and they now work as a consultant with Sweet Baby Inc. So this is someone who's been heavily involved with suppressing free speech and enforcing ideological ideas for a long time, over 10 years at least at this point anyway. So here's what Lego Butts had to say concerning this curator tool that exposes them. Again, all from Twitter, so let's read together. Which, listen, I'm not sure who uses curator lists. My guess is it's people who would never ever buy the games any of us work on, except they do and don't list those particular games here. But there's just nothing preventing this, even though it's clearly not what curators are for. It's doubled in followers overnight, and we get to see exactly what people are describing it as, a way to avoid inclusivity. They're just saying it, and there's no one challenging them. That isn't a complaint, it's just a fact, and I can't stay quiet about it, nor should I have to. For example, at Steam doesn't have guidelines for curators, as far as I can tell, that would prevent someone from starting a curation group that focuses on, say, Sweet Baby Inc. and warns people to not buy games they're associated with, which could just list any game at all. Anyway, remember that these people do exist, and while ignoring it goes a very long way, boosting those you know are affected and targeted is the other side of it that needs to also happen. Not even Sweet Baby, just everyone existing that they are angry at for existing. It's pretty funny to see a note on my Steam curator post. I guess they need to defend themselves because they're completely wrong about everything Sweet Baby or any narrative team does and have no interest in finding out. Lego Butts is clearly attempting to save face and try to paint Sweet Baby as this righteous cause. But we know that's anything but the case in reality. The truth is that everything Sweet Baby has touched has been ruined or downright destroyed. And it's obvious that when they are involved with something, things can even get so bad that they actually end up closing shop. Like with Forspoken or Saints Row, which are two games whose studios closed down to how poorly they sold and reviewed. Of course, users on Twitter then began replying to these consultants, and they had some good things to say, like this person for example. I'm confused. Why would this be a problem? No matter what your thoughts are, I don't see why it shouldn't be allowed for a curator to identify games with some specific companies involved. I'm sure other curators do similar things for different reasons. Cringe. I thought you were proud of your work. Why hide it? This one especially resonated with me because it's true. If a consulting firm like this is so proud of their work on the video games that they create, why wouldn't they want their work to be more publicly known? The only reason why you wouldn't want your work to be known is because you know deep down in your heart that what you're doing is disingenuous and actively works to ruin the products you're involved with. There simply can't be any other reason. And that's what many users are clearly pushing back against. Everyone is tired and annoyed of their favorite games getting destroyed like this time and again. All I wanted was great Spider-Man games that didn't sideline Peter Parker or make him seem pathetic. Yet as soon as Sweet Baby got involved with Spider-Man, it was obvious that anyone who is white, straight, or male must be ruined to make way for the new age of progress in their minds, I guess. And we're clearly all tired of it, and it's clear that when consumers voice their opinions, they just get attacked and belittled constantly. So the only real course of action that will actually change things is for consumers to vote with their wallets, which is clearly what they've been doing. And remember that stuff like Saints Row or Forspoken failed and imploded long before anyone even knew what Sweet Baby even was at the time. Those games were not boycotted because of these consultants being involved. As like I said, their name and existence was largely unknown at the time. But it was clear that the messages and handling of these games were considered so poor that users rejected them anyway. So to say that players rejected games like those in order to stick a middle finger to this consulting firm, when again, no one really knew they existed during those games' releases, is just not true at all. But now, of course, we've been made more aware, and that worries them. And they likely are angry because now their name is being attached to something that will instantly mark those games for failure. And if the hard work of the games made are rejected and fail because of Sweet Baby's involvement, then obviously, going forward, less studios or publishers will want to actively work with Sweet Baby so their games aren't marked and rejected in a mass exodus by future fans. But really, that isn't the fault of the fans or this curator tool either, because Sweet Baby could have been a positive change on the games that they worked on, but it's clear that their ideology and group collective mindset is anything but what fans want in their games. So really, if these people are mad about this, they can't blame anyone but themselves. Because I didn't tell these consultants to do what they did, nor did any of you watching. Why is it our fault that these consultants have ruined so many great franchises already? Then of course the question becomes, well, what do they have to do in the future then? Of course this consulting firm will want to keep getting paid and exist, but if their name being tied to a project will instantly flag it for mass rejection, what do they do now? The likely scenario is they work on future projects in an uncredited fashion, or they get listed in the credits of future projects with different names, like instead of the credits of a game just saying Sweet Baby in it, it'll just say consultants and a name or something like that. But I would argue going forward now that people are hyper aware to the existence of this group, and every single game being made now, especially those of Western studios, will have their credits and development examined with a surgical lens. And every single game being made will be examined and studied by literally thousands of people to ensure each game made is not stained with the mark of the stinky poor baby and their woke consultants. And maybe even then they'll just forego their name being attached to anything. and will simply work as an invisible boogeyman in the industry going forward. But then, whenever a game comes out and the writing seems off, or the characters, especially straight white ones, start to feel as if they're being undermined, players will likely then collectively start theorizing if the game they're playing has been marked. So really, there's no realistic way that Sweet Baby, in my opinion, will be able to operate going forward without their existence being called out constantly. And if they truly believe they can strong-arm the industry into parading around while being attached to them, then we're going to see more studios close. We'll have more massive failures and franchises being destroyed and then some in the future. Because at this point, the only way to rid the industry of a cancer like this is by starving it and propping it up for all to see. It does break my heart that the Rocksteady I used to love has been reduced to a sniveling pile of disappointment and ashes. Like, there was this article from Paul Tassi about Suicide Squad recently titled, "It no longer seems possible Suicide Squad will last the year." I mean, just reading what Paul says here is brutal. He said, and I quote, "I have never seen a game with this much time invested, with this much money invested from such a talented developer self-destruct this quickly. And now things have gotten so bad with Suicide Squad that it no longer feels possible that the game will get out the year of content it has already announced for the game. As Warner Bros. Does not seem like a company that is in any mood to throw good money after bad reviews. And they've already commented that the game has performed below its expectations, which has set them up for a tough year in their gaming division. Suicide Squad did not debut well on PC or Xbox to start with, as the game was doing half of Marvel's Avengers debut numbers on Steam, and it never got higher than top 20 on Xbox. It did get to number 1 on PlayStation for a time, but after a short while fell out of the top 10 entirely, and we don't know where it is now. But after a month, things are just bleak. I haven't seen Suicide Squad inside Xbox's top 50 for a week at least. And now on Steam, which yes should be a solid place to play the game, I have 60 hours in there, now has hard to believe player counts. The game peaked at just 593 players yesterday. An hour ago, there were just 287 players online. Reviews remain 80% positive, but it simply doesn't matter. It's an utter ghost town. I did not like Suicide Squad much at launch. I still think it's full of massive problems, but I did enjoy making builds and moment-to-moment gameplay over time. I would like more characters, more missions, and course correction from what's gone wrong. But this game is performing badly at a level rarely seen, and it does not at all seem like this is going to work. And I fear about future layoffs at Rocksteady given recent industry trends and just how poorly this has gone. It's a brutal saga and it may be about to get worse." End quote. And as we've seen with the layoffs in the industry, which are coming pretty much daily at this point, I don't think it's a matter of if, but when Rocksteady gets hit with major layoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised if, by the end of this year, that the name Rocksteady ends up ceasing to exist entirely. And it's not just because Squad is live service, which is a dying genre already, but that it, like many other games I've shown, have been marked with the stink of the Sweet Baby. And it's proof that now going forward, if you want to push identity politics and nonsense like this, you're probably going to fail. I truly do think that we're seeing a turning point in the industry and the culture war in general right now. I think we're going to see the entire industry changing its tune and realizing that this moronic push for these ideas are going nowhere but a race to the bottom of the barrel. And I think what these Sweet Baby consultants are trying to do won't work and will just result in the Streisand effect, which just means more people will become aware and support this curator tool. And actually, by attempting to silence this user and the tool in question, these Sweet Babies have just exposed themselves to an even greater audience than they normally were already. So they screwed themselves over and kinda made it worse for themselves. Also, in terms of those consultants attacking that user, this person said it best. This is targeted harassment, by the way, and they're right. If they're actively trying to send a mob to strong-arm a platform into silencing or banning someone, that's harassment, bullying, and against the terms of service. But it's not surprising considering people like this Legobot person has a history of doxing, bullying, and using influence to silence others. But I hope what this video has done has shown you to not be silent. Don't be afraid and don't ever think you're not good enough to speak on something or stand up to someone. That's how the bullies win, and I just want you to know that I stand with the people against these fanatics. We're stronger together, and we can change things through talking to each other and by being positive and helping one another. Let's never stoop to their level. After all, that's what they want us to do, but we're better than that, aren't we? And finally, just to really drive this home, I don't think that inclusivity is a bad thing in video games, but it's very clearly being used by people like the stinky babies to ruin this industry for their own reasons. I think it's okay to want representation, but it should never come at the cost of belittling or ruining another group in order to make it happen. And I think that's really what is the core of this fight anyway. And it's very obvious that the only real reason these consultants are mad are because they will not be able to operate at the same capacity that they used to, and are likely fearful that this very public backlash against them during an era of layoffs, mind you, is quite simply the worst timing possible for someone like Sweet Baby. Because if these studios and publishers are already slashing so many jobs due to mismanagement, bloat, live service failures, and low sales, what competent company will look at the track record and built-in disdain of a consulting group like this and genuinely think including their name attached to one of their future projects is a good idea? And like I said, if what needs to happen to change things is to burn everything to the ground to start anew, it's very clear that consumers, and even the executives in charge of big IP, are willing to do just that. It's a losing war, and the consumers will win this regardless. You never attack your audience like this, and Sweet Baby, like many others before them, are learning the hard way. But maybe that's a good thing, because this needs to change. And if it means by burning it all to the ground, it looks like that's what's going to happen, whether any of us want it to happen or not. So thanks for watching, subscribe, like, and share the video if you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful day. Thanks to my patrons, enjoy your life, and I'll see you in the next one.